A shocker here from St. Andrews in Scotland. The Minnesota Vikings have fired their general manager, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, and that might have downstream implications when it comes to the 49ers potentially trading Mac Jones, because yesterday we heard that the Vikings were interested in trading for Mac Jones. We also know that Minnesota let Sam Darnold walk after Darnold led that team to 14 wins last season. And Sam is about to play in the Super Bowl for the Seattle Seahawks. So perhaps the lesson here for any GM is if you let a quarterback walk after you won 14 games with him, you better not see him lead his next team to the Super Bowl while your own team slides to 9-8, because that's what happened to Minnesota. You know, Steve Young, he might have called this a couple days ago at that Rise of the 49ers premiere. Here's Steve talking about the Vikings letting go of Sam Darnold.
The Vikings, with what happened and how what the team took to him in the city, what are you doing? But now he's going to do it in Seattle. Good for him. Couldn't be happier for Sam. Couldn't be happier.
So obviously it moved on to J.J. McCarthy for the Minnesota Vikings. And Kwesi had this explanation. It was a long-winded explanation, talking or implying that hindsight is 2020 when it came to letting go of Sam Darnold. We can listen to that right now. We can listen to at least part of that right now. But here it is. This is from a Minnesota Vikings press conference, and we'll break it down. But I think there are important lessons to be learned here, and I'll play that in just a second, because first I want to talk about this Mac Jones thing. I think that Minnesota is maybe even more likely now to make a move for an experienced quarterback like Mac, because they went away from experience and they went to the youngster J.J. McCarthy, and everything blew up in their face here in the 2025 season. They decided to build a football team in Minnesota that was very old, and I'm going to talk about age in the 49ers in a little bit, but it was old without a proven quarterback. That's really, really tough. You know, what I think that Kwesi saw, and what I think the Vikings, it probably wasn't just him, what I think they saw was the 49ers, who had built an experienced team, who had paid a lot of money to a lot of different positions, and then had a rookie contract, Brock Purdy, swoop in and take that team all the way to the Super Bowl. And the Vikings said, all right, well, we'll spend a lot of money on the defensive side of the ball. We'll build up a team of superstars, or at least notable players. Maybe not superstars. That probably was a little bit of a generous description. But what we'll do is we'll pair those veterans with a young quarterback in J.J. McCarthy. We won't spend the money on Sam Darnold. He'll go to Seattle for over $30 million per year, and we'll live life that way. But what happened is that the 49ers situation over the course of 2022 and 2023 was shown to be an exception. You know, not everybody is Brock Purdy. Just because somebody's a first-round pick like J.J. McCarthy, that doesn't automatically mean that he's going to step in there with a veteran roster and succeed. It's hard to play quarterback at a high level in this league. And because Minnesota took the risk of taking the quarterback position for granted, not really, I think, appreciating what Sam Darnold did for them in that 2024 season, because if you really did appreciate it the way that you should, you wouldn't have let Sam Darnold go at that most important position. Because of that, Minnesota ended up in this mess, and now they have fired a general manager who has a 13-win season and a 14-win season under his belt over his first 4 seasons as a GM in this league. Minnesota's ownership met multiple times following the season, holding extensive conversations with leaders, including the head coach, Kevin O'Connell. They recently met again to finalize their moves, and after those discussions, decided to fire their GM despite his new contract. Kwesi Adofo-Mensah signed a new contract last offseason. So this Darnold situation, I think, really, really did him in. And now we'll see if Minnesota gets even more adamant about trading for a veteran to help lead them forward, since they've already dedicated a lot of money to veterans and an old defense and a defense that still played decently well over the course of this 2025 season. If you've already paid for that and you already feel that you have a structure as a football team that you need to capitalize on now after all those investments, Mac Jones could be a guy that you go for as Minnesota. Somebody said, this is from X, throughout the season, there was talk about an underlying tension in the Vikings building in league circles. One league source said it had been ugly in Minnesota. Then today, the Vikings fired Kwesi Adofo-Mensah. Let's play his press conference. This is obviously from before he was fired, but we can play the press conference where there was the discussion, the retrospective discussion of letting Sam Darnold go. Why did Minnesota do that? And, there's just so much overcomplication here. Just have a listen to Kwesi Adofo-Mensah.
Spent to save to not franchise Sam. Just how do you weigh those things and how the results turned out?
You spend a lot of those nights, obviously, you're up in these decisions and they're uncertain, and you're trying to make sure that you don't lock yourselves into what you did and thinking that it's always right. And so there's those nights that you wake up and stare at the ceiling and ask yourself, but I always go back to the process and what we thought at the time. It's easier to kind of go and be revisionist and results-based, but going to really think through what we had at the time. I still understand why we did what we did. The results maybe didn't play out the way we did. We wanted them to, but ultimately, I think that at the end of the day that we could have executed better in certain places. And I'm not going to say it individually in terms of a particular player, but just executing better, knowing what the room was, play style wise, experience wise, and just kind of really put together a better combination of people, collective in that group. That's kind of the thing I've probably focused on the most. And then also ultimately understanding how we play and win football games. Again, I'm not going to get into the specific how we group it, but we've won a high clip of games over here since we've been here, when we've gotten a certain level of play, a certain style of explosive plays. These are things we've talked about, but a lot of times points aren't made until something is removed. And then you kind of see the complex system and how when you move that one variable, how that one variable affects other things, and really seeing how when we weren't that explosive, how teams played us and how they kind of got to box a different fight, and when they got to box a different fight, how that impacted our defense and their ability to create turnovers and win games the way we thought we could win. So that was really just a great learning experience that tied into the quarterback discussion, and those are things we'll carry with us going forward.
Talk about an overcomplication. My goodness. Talking about doing different things to support the limitations of the quarterback position. At the end of the day, Kwesi is a very analytics-oriented background. For the 49ers from 2013 to 2016, he was the manager of football research and development. So he's the R&D guy for San Francisco. And then he was promoted to director of football research and development, a role he held from 2017 to 2019. Became vice president of football operations in Cleveland after that in 2020 and 2021. Finally elevated to GM of Minnesota in 2022 to 2025. So obviously a very analytics-heavy background. And I think sometimes when there is just, you guys know me, I love the analytics, but I try to keep this practical. And sometimes when you delve too far into the analytics and you say, well, as long as we can support the quarterback position in this way and set things up for success here, it really won't matter who's at quarterback. It could be a rookie. It could be JJ McCarthy. We can make things explosive even without him. I'm sorry. At some point, you need talent, real talent when the bullets are flying at that position. It is not easy to play, no matter whose system you're in, even if it is a Shanahan tree system. I would even argue that Brock Purdy has one of the hardest jobs, maybe the hardest job in the NFL. Those are all incorrect stereotypes, the ones that say, oh, you could just plug any quarterback in here and they'll be successful. It's not true. I think the Vikings started flirting with that incorrect mentality, and now it has gotten their general manager fired. And I think that it has raised Mac Jones's value on the open market because he's somebody that's shown that he can produce in a Shanahan system with some problems around him as far as lack of weaponry. Look at what Mac did against the LA Rams in week 5 with a skeleton crew around him. It is not easy to run the controls of the quarterback position. And the value of that should be completely underscored by the debacle of Sam Darnold leaving Minnesota, with Minnesota thinking that quarterback play was that replaceable. It is not. You know, guys, going back, if you look at the 49ers under Shanahan, Jimmy Garoppolo deserves a lot more respect than he got from a lot of the fan base. Brock Purdy deserves hell of a lot more respect than he's even getting now from a lot of the 49ers fan base. Sam Darnold deserved a whole lot more respect from the decision makers in Minnesota. And now he's somewhere where he's wanted, and he's about to play in a Super Bowl. As Steve Young said, what are they doing in Minnesota? As you can tell, we're in a different spot now. I'm at St. Andrews in Scotland, the old course, and it's dark right now since it's already after sunset here. I know that it's earlier in the morning back on the West Coast, but if you look out that window during the day, the old course here at St. Andrews, British Open here, and you know, a lot of famous stuff has happened on that golf course. The old course is right outside this window, so we'll be. Margot. Oh boy. Please.
Oh God. I have to bleep out my.
Oh my God, I don't think so. I think we're keeping that in. Oh, that was good. But you guys thought that I couldn't drive. You thought that Casper had to drive me everywhere. Not only can I drive on the wrong side. Wheel on the right. We're in Scotland. We're crossing an awesome bridge. There are several awesome bridges right next to each other here as we make the drive from Edinburgh to St. Andrews. And you know, St. Andrews is where golf was born, the oldest golf course in the world. I've got to tell you that the 49ers have the oldest offensive roster in the NFL. Average age of over 29 years old, which is ancient by NFL standards in 2025. So the 49ers have to get younger and faster on the offensive side of the ball. By the way, on the way out of Edinburgh, we passed the rugby stadium, the National Rugby Stadium at Murrayfield. It was really cool. I'll talk about that in a little bit. But first, at this bridge, give me a little bit of a Eastern Bay Bridge, the Oakland span of the Bay Bridge vibe, right? They might have even used this as an inspiration. You could see here, it's several more pylons or towers or whatever you want to call it. I'm not really sure about bridge architecture, but that looks like the old Bay Bridge over there. Look, you got the new half of the Bay Bridge, and that looks like the original half, like the western half. You know, we were in Portugal earlier this year, and they have a copy of the Golden Gate Bridge, which is like the hybrid of the Bay Bridge and the Golden Gate Bridge. Their dictator built it a few decades ago, and it's like a cheap knockoff of San Francisco. Here, it looks like they're just taking actual San Francisco Bay Area bridges, like the Bay Bridge in specific, and putting them right next to each other. I think it's cool. I'm here for it, and I'm here for the 49ers discussion. So anyway, they got some older players, and obviously some of them are still very effective, like Trent Williams, who's my age, who's going to be 38. So yes, I did just call myself old, but sometimes experience really pays off because you know how to drive. You can drive even on the right side. You know, it only took me about 2 minutes to get recalibrated here, and your brain rewires itself so that everything is mirrored when you're on the right side of the car instead of the left side, and of course on the left side of the road instead of the right side. As you can tell, it's a bit of a trip. One thing that we did notice is that here in Scotland they use miles and miles per hour. A lot of the rest of Europe, it's kilometers. So here they're more on the American, what do they call it, the imperial measurement instead of the metric measurement. So
They still use meters.
They do still use meter, but not where we're at right now. They're using miles. It says 3.8 miles. Look, 470 yards. Like, they're American here. They're using yards. They're using miles. That they're not using the European metric system. I guess that we're not really on the European mainland. All right, I got to get to the football talk. What are the 49ers going to do to get a little bit younger? Because a lot of the statistics that were not favorable for this team, especially for this offense, I think were very correlated to the fact that they were old, that they were by far the oldest offense in the entire NFL. One of the stats is average separation. That was the worst in the league in 2024, and it was number 24 out of 32 teams in 2025. And it was ugly at the end when guys got hurt against Seattle. Nobody was getting open for San Francisco downfield. Average speed for the 49ers was not great. They ranked number, I think, 24 or 25 out of 32 teams in terms of the miles per hour of ball carriers. Look, you could see here I'm going 44 miles per hour. The speed limit is 40, so technically I'm breaking the law. The 49ers were going like if they were in this car right now, they'd be going like 24. They weren't fast in terms of the MPH, especially toward the end of the season. And then, of course, they had a lot of those injuries and they had a lot of guys missing time. That, I think, is also very correlated to health. Now, speaking of that, when we passed Murray Field, which is the national rugby stadium, so it seats 67,000 in Edinburgh, I noticed that their practice fields were right next door to it. They reminded me a lot of Levi's, but I was looking for the electrical substation and I couldn't find one. So I think here in Scotland, they figured it out that you don't build your practice field next to an electrical substation. All kidding aside, everybody's going to start yelling in the comment section. Some people think it's a conspiracy theory. Some people think it's legit. Scientifically, it doesn't look like there's... oh, no, that's a horse box. So it's not a horse trailer, but a horse box, right?
Yeah, they call them horse boxes.
That's
in the UK.
very European. So
Yeah, they're like tricked out vans.
instead of filming dogs on this trip, you're going to get horse boxes and cars going in the wrong direction.
Sorry, you were saying?
I was talking about the electrical substation.
For the lack
and it's obviously built on really flimsy evidence. The guy just stuck his meter under the fence. He didn't even get an accurate reading of what was on the field. He admitted so in his own writing, but it's turned into a perception issue for the 49ers. Kyle Juszczyk came out and said the other day that he wants all the science done to make sure that everything is optimized for the players. And I just noticed there was no substation by the National Scottish Rugby practice fields, which is worth noting. And it's just funny because the setup did seem a lot like the one at Levi Stadium. Anyway, the 49ers need to be a little bit healthier. I think that generally happens when you get younger. They need to be faster on offense, and they need to separate better. And another thing is the run game, from a power perspective, wasn't what San Francisco needed it to be in 2025. Especially running center to right guard there in the interior, kind of those A-gap runs. They were not effective at all, to the point where that first, third, and fourth and short against Seattle that truly derailed the game after the opening kickoff, and the 49ers couldn't convert. They got stuffed on the third down trying to hand to Christian McCaffrey. If you get to too many spots in a season where it's third and short, like less than a yard, fourth and less than a yard, and you don't trust your own ability to just pick up a yard, that really breaks the basis of an offense. And you saw it in Seattle on 4th and 1. Yeah, I know that the Seahawks got that late timeout call in and Kyle Shanahan wasn't happy about it, but the 49ers were passing. And, they converted before the play was nullified. When they had to try it again, the 49ers decided they couldn't just run in a standard way. They had to run some kind of option play that was Juszczyk, speaking of him, to Christian McCaffrey, that the Seahawks absolutely blew up. I mean, it was just...
I just missed the sheep.
You're looking for some sheep? That's too bad.
Well, I saw some sheep.
So sheep are going to be the version of dogs on this trip. So the 49ers need to get the dog back in their interior run game, because right now it is too sheepish. And, that was a sheepish play call. They're running some kind of pitch option when they needed less than a yard, when they should have just been running a quarterback sneak. But the numbers, especially when they were running center to right guard, right up the middle this past year and in the past couple seasons, have not been good for the 49ers. You hear a lot of talk about Tyler Linderbaum, the free agent center, pending free agent center. Jake Brendel, speaking of aging players, he's going to be 34 years old in September. And I thought Brendel was much better this year in pass protection than he was in 2024. I think that he no longer had knee tendonitis, which was a big step up in his health. But I don't know if he was getting the power run blocking that the 49ers needed. I know Dominic Pooney was hurt for much of the season, and I think that compromised some of his ability in the power run blocking game. The 49ers need that run efficiency to be the basis of their offense, and they that's separate, but it's going to end up working in conjunction with the separation ability in the pass game downfield, because in a Shanahan offense, the run plays off the pass and the pass plays off the run. And the bottom line is that you need to set things up in a decent way for Brock Purdy. He is unquestionably one of the best quarterbacks in the game, but he had no help, like absolutely no help against the Seahawks. And a lot of the problems do circle back to the 49ers' issues on offense with age. It's wild here because people park, like we're supposed to be driving on the left side of the road with the wheel being here on the right, but people take these spots and block like a quarter of the road, so you have to cross over just to get past the parked cars, which are parked like facing the wrong way. It's a total trip. Now here comes a bus. Thankfully, I have experience driving the Amalfi Coast in Italy, so this is a piece of cake. I think it's pretty big. Yeah. This road is like 5 times as wide as the one in Italy. But the trick is that I'm driving on the right side of the road, so you got to think about things a little bit differently.
You're driving on the correct side.
No, I'm driving on the left side of the road, but I'm driving on the right side of the car.
Oh, yes.
My wheel is on the right side of the car. All right, now we've hit some of that moody Scottish countryside. This is what we were looking for. Now I got to be careful. Your depth perception is challenged because I'm not like, you don't feel how much room you have on the left anymore, right? But you gauge it by the right. And on the right side, of course, you don't want to cross over to the right, across the line, because then you're going to get nailed by this truck, for example. Now this, Margot, oh boy. Woo.
Oh, God. Bleep out my...
Oh my God, I don't think so. I think we're keeping that in. Oh, that was good. He took a little swerve. That was a little bridge. I decided I chickened out there. That, that sketchiness level, 8 out of 10. Remember, the 10 out of 10 was in Italy, Amalfi Coast. Where, okay, now you're getting distracted again. Now there's a guy right here on the left. Be careful right there.
See him? He's
You remember the Amalfi Coast where the bus came and he was like, guys, just chill. And he missed us by like an inch. That was sketchiness
That
level
was
11 out of
terrifying.
10. Yeah, that was pretty bad though. So anyway, that's what driving in Scotland is like. I think we should focus on the road now. We'll see you guys soon. All right, and we made it in one piece, thankfully. And that leads me to another point of this discussion. The 49ers offense is no longer, and Minnesota is one of these teams as well with Kevin O'Connell. I mean, he's in the Sean McVay tree. The 49ers offense is no longer unique in this league as far as the advantage that they have. The San Francisco offense has proliferated across the entire NFL. And Robert Saleh actually had a really, really interesting nugget about this in his opening press conference for the Tennessee Titans. Have a listen to this. He's got Brian Daboll as his offensive coordinator in Tennessee, who is not from the Shanahan tree. And the Titans and Saleh actually believe that this is going to give them a comparative advantage. And now they're going to be zagging when the rest of the league is zigging. Listen to Robert.
One of the biggest, best offensive minds in all of football, period. And if you look at the NFL landscape right now, his offense and his influence is all over the league. Probably, I would argue, 80 to almost 90% of the league. And so Dave's is going to be different. So from a game planning standpoint, and I'm just speaking for myself, like as a defensive coach, you're going through it, just looks like every offense is the same. But when you play the Tennessee Titans, it's going to be different. And so there is a level of game planning that's going to have to change within a week. So that's first. Dave's has had a history of developing young quarterbacks in this league in college and the different stops that he's had, and he's touched many from experience to youth. He has a tremendous amount of experience with tremendous quarterbacks all over, but there's a lot of benefits to what he does as a defensive guy, game planning against Dave's. I can tell you that he's always going to strain you both run and pass. He's going to find the run-pass conflicts within your scheme for individual players. He's going to attack the shit out of it, and again, excuse my language, but he's special in that regard. He's a problem to go against.
We needed to bleep out Robert Saleh too. We bleeped out Margot when we almost got run over by that truck. I mean, he was crossing over. You guys saw the video. You got it. It's on tape. You can go watch it. That was a scary situation here on the way up to St. Andrews. But the overarching point from Robert Saleh is a really interesting one, and it's that the first few years of Shanahan and McVay, the rest of the league was trying to play catch up, not just offensively, but defenses around the league were trying to figure out how to play the 49ers and play the Rams. And now that all these assistants have gone to other teams and we see these offenses being played around the rest of the league, well, you can no longer mask personnel deficiencies as easily as you used to. I mean, the 49ers picked up a heck of a lot of yardage in 2018 when they didn't have a great team. For example, George Kittle set the tight end receiving yardage record that year in 2018 when there wasn't a whole lot of talent. And Nick Mullins threw for a ton of yards that year. And we know that Nick Mullins was not a very good quarterback. I think that it's a lot harder, if not impossible, to put up massive numbers with just the Shanahan offense now. You actually need supreme talent to put up massive numbers now. But you just can't scheme it anymore. And I think there was a time when that offense had taken the league by storm and had butchered defensive alignments and principles to the point where you could get away with a little bit of a talent deficiency. Now you can't. Now you can't be one of the slowest teams in the league or one of the oldest offenses in the league with a lack of speed, a lack of separation, and a lack of health to go along with those age issues, because defenses have caught up. And Robert Saleh is even talking about it in Tennessee as if, well, I've got a Brian Daboll offense. Kyle Shanahan is great, but everybody in the league is prepared to face a Shanahan offense on a week-in, week-out basis. How are they going to be prepared to play us? And I'm not saying the 49ers need to change their offensive approach. I do think, though, that they need to make sure that they keep on investing and renovating the firepower on this offense. And that's why I did a whole thing about this team and the age. I mean, you saw it, the offensive age over 29 years, the oldest unit in the NFL. And a lot of the problems came to a head down the stretch of this season. And injuries were a huge part of it, but I would offer that injuries are correlated with age. I talked about the substation in that video in the driving part. Substation is, interesting talk because, people are very, very tuned into that now that the Super Bowl is happening at Levi's. But actual studies, like Brian Suter, the doctor, I think he's based somewhere in Missouri, he scoured the data and he found that the 49ers, that they don't have an outlier injury rate. They have a high injury rate. And he found that it's more likely a byproduct of roster age on this team. And I just showed you that the 49ers had the oldest offense in 2025. So if you want more availability, you're going to have to become more spry on offense. And obviously, if you want more explosiveness, you're going to have to become more spry. You're going to have to hit higher on some of those GPS metrics over the course of the season. Dr. Alan Sills, the NFL's chief medical officer on the electrical substation theory next to the 49ers practice field. One of the things that's been said is that the club has led the league in non-direct contact and lower extremity injuries. That's simply not true. That's false. Yes, that's exactly what I was just saying. The 49ers, and Brian Suter looked at that. He did a great job in his video, so shout out to him. I know he's retweeted me a few times. I've never actually talked to him, but I do love the fact that he's data-oriented, and it's somebody that I quoted in my article that I recently wrote about the topic. So much of this stuff is sensationalist, and it's pseudoscience, and it's just based on suppositions that aren't true. It's not scientific. It's junk science at the very best. And one of the things that the article or the video or the tweet thread or whatever it was about the substation, one of the things that it was based on was this assumption almost like that the 49ers have the highest injury rate in the league. And they were very beaten up this year. And they were beaten up at the wrong positions, that's for sure. They lost a lot of A-list players this year, but they don't have the highest injury rate in the league. So at some point, facts actually do matter. And it was funny that I was looking for the substation as I took that little tram by the National Rugby Stadium here in Scotland. Fun times. All right, guys. Right now, I'm going to take some questions and all of you can ask them in the comment section. What a crazy kind of turn of events there in Minnesota, though. And we're hearing all about this friction within the building, and I think the friction makes sense. I mean, I tweeted after the firing happened of Kwesi Adofo-Mensah that, you know, the one thing that you can't see happen if you're the GM of a team that let go of a quarterback with whom you won 14 games, you can't see that quarterback go to the Super Bowl the next year with someone else while your own team struggles. And Minnesota definitely struggled in that NFC North this season. Quarterback play should not be taken for granted. It can't. Good quarterback play is worth its weight in gold in this league. Will I be eating haggis? Is it pronounced haggis or haggis? That is definitely Scottish food. I've seen it on the menu, and I haven't yet had it, but good question. See it in that comment section right now. Somebody's saying Margot can't drive because it wouldn't be traditional, huh? I think I'm a better driver than Margot, and I think Margot would agree with me. And I think that she prefers when I drive, especially if I have to drive on the right side of the road. Now, she took a trip to England with her mom a few months ago, and I think Margot did the driving. I wasn't there. I was somewhere else. I think I was in Prague at the time. But yeah, when it's just the two of us, then there's driving to do, especially out here in the UK. Will let me do that job. That was a fun video to make, though, even though we almost died when that truck was coming the other way. Is haggis really goat's intestines, lung, and heart? All right, maybe I won't have that. You know, we went to Dishoom today. Every time I'm in the UK, Dishoom, it's an Indian Bombay cuisine. Place is fire. The place is good. That's like a must stop on all of these trips. Any news on the defensive coordinator? Well, the 49ers could make a hiring right now, but they might still be waiting on the Arizona process to resolve itself with Raheem Morris, because he's still technically in the mix there. And Clint Kubiak, speaking of Darnold and the Seahawks, is the domino that needs to fall there. Also, Jim Schwartz. The 49ers have set themselves up nicely. They've got a higher floor with Gus Bradley than they have in the past, as I think, you know, I don't want to say backup plan. I just want to say stable, high floor plan. But then they could take these big swings and see if somebody like Jim Schwartz or Raheem Morris might fit the system. They obviously also interviewed Joe Woods. Don't be a wuss. So you're saying haggis is good if prepared with seasonings? I guess I have to go to a place where it's prepared well with seasonings. You know, right now the weather here is set up for comfort food. It really is. We knew what we were getting into. We knew that it was going to be moody here, not Jake Moody, but we knew it was going to be moody weather. We knew that we probably wouldn't see much of the sun. When we got into the international terminal at SFO, I told Lombardi herself, hey, say goodbye to the sun. You're not going to see it for a few days. But it definitely is conducive to the consumption of comfort food. Do I foresee any realistic move towards Schwartz? Well, only if he's let go from Cleveland. He's still under contract. I think the 49ers are very interested, but I think that Cleveland would have to allow Jim Schwartz to go elsewhere. And right now, that isn't the case. Kyle Shanahan put together I think it was a 32-page PowerPoint presentation. 32-page. Mike McDaniel had helped him put it together back in 2014 to get out of his contract with the Cleveland Browns. So it's happened before. The question is, can it happen again? Do they need to put Mike McDaniel on speed dial to write a 33-page PowerPoint presentation to the Browns to let Jim Schwartz out of his contract? Remember that Cleveland did not give Schwartz the head coaching job. It went to Todd Monken instead. And reportedly, Jim was really, really upset. But as of right now, they still want to keep him hostage. And I said that the Browns are not known to be a benevolent organization. Jimmy Haslam, the owner, he wants to keep Jim Schwartz, who's known as a really good defensive coordinator around the league, around. And, if Cleveland wants to die on that hill, Jim Schwartz won't coach anywhere next year. Right. So it's one of those things where we'll just have to see. We also have to see about Raheem Morris and the Cardinals. But the fact that the 49ers have Bradley under contract, kind of like Schwartz is under contract with Cleveland, but I think the situation is a whole lot more benevolent in San Francisco. The fact that that's the setup for the 49ers means that they are in good position to land the best defensive coordinator candidate possible. They are not hung out to dry. I think last year, to a certain extent, they were out in the open. The 49ers were. They were hoping that Robert Saleh would not get the Jacksonville head coaching job, because if he got that, who were they going to turn to? A defensive coordinator. Maybe Gus Bradley last year, but everything worked out last season, and that was good for the 49ers. They're going to hope that everything works out again for them here in 2025 or 26 now. We've turned the calendar. It's January 30th. Happy birthday to Alan Lombardi. That is my dad. It's January 30th, and it's January 30th back home. He didn't pick up the phone when I tried to call him a little bit earlier today, and now I will make that call again. Mike has some more news here. This was 14 minutes ago on Pat McAfee. The Browns wanted to build up their offense, so they hired Todd Monken. Jim Schwartz still has 2 years left on that contract. The Browns still want him to come back, but Jim Schwartz doesn't want to be back. So standoff coming in Cleveland, it appears. The 49ers could theoretically, if they want Jim Schwartz bad enough, they might be able to trade with the Browns for the rights to Jim Schwartz as their defensive coordinator. Or they could just hire Raheem Morris if that's what they want to do. There's Joe Woods. There's Gus Bradley as well. Schwartz is just so interesting. I mean, the most interesting hires, in my opinion, would be Schwartz or Raheem Morris, because both of those guys would bring potentially significant changes to the 49ers defense. Schwartz especially, I mean, he runs man coverage at a higher rate than the rest of the NFL. Like, man coverage for Jim Schwartz, number one in the league for the Browns this past season. Okay? That's for a team like the 49ers, who have been zone dominant over essentially the entire Kyle Shanahan era, starting with Saleh, moving to Ryans, moving to Steve Wilkes, moving to Nick Sorensen, moving back to Robert Saleh, playing a lot of man and blitzing a lot. I know they did a little bit more under Steve Wilkes, but blitzing at a top 10 level, and I think that's at a top 10 rate, that's what Jim Schwartz has done. He's not afraid of blitzing. If you pair that with a wide nine, which is where the Schwartz thing is extremely intriguing, because he's a wide nine guy. So in that way, his DNA matches the 49ers. You could see big changes on the back end for San Francisco, which they might need at safety, combined with a rehaul back to what they did so well and what they've been trying to do, but the personnel hasn't stayed healthy enough to do it along the pass rush, along the defensive line. That would be fascinating. And then Raheem Morris just has such an adaptable background. To me, where would the 49ers turn? How would they work on the personnel? Because ultimately, you want competence at defensive coordinator. You have to have more than they had with Nick Sorensen in 2024, right? And if you have competence, then it's going to come down to the talent, to the players that you have. How would they reconstruct some of the weak spots of the defense? Safety, for example, defensive tackle, though those are the positions that the 49ers need. How would they reconstruct those positions? And then how would the new coordinator, whether it be Morris, Schwartz, Bradley, Woods, whoever it is, how would that new coordinator call the defense, align the defense dictate the coverages with that new talent. I think it's going to be a fascinating build over the course of this offseason to track. And you guys know that I'm going to do it deeper than anybody here on this channel. Kyle Juszczyk on Christian McCaffrey on the Rich Eisen show. I feel Christian McCaffrey is the best football player I have ever played with. Kyle trained with McCaffrey last offseason. This is what Juszczyk said. No joke, it's 6 days out of the week. He started at 8:30 in the morning. No joke, 6 p.m. nonstop. 8:30 to 6 p.m. He has trainers with him the entire day. We're going from one gym to the field, to his pool, to a different recovery place. I'm exhausted. I by no means am putting in 9-hour days in the offseason, especially not 6 days a week. But Christian McCaffrey is. And that's how he was able to handle a high volume load in 2025 and perform at a Hall of Fame level. I mean, Christian puts a lot into this, and he's a future Hall of Famer. I hope that Roger Craig is rightfully elected into the Hall of Fame. We'll find out here over the course of the next week. It would be special if Roger is inducted during a Super Bowl week, or as the announcement is made over the course of a Super Bowl week back in the Bay Area. That would be big news. And Roger was Christian before Christian, right? 1,000, 1,000. Christian almost went 1,000, 1,000 again. He would have been the first player to do that twice. And he did it despite everything defensively being focused on him, given the shortcomings due to injuries of that 49ers offense. I mean, you've got to tip your cap to how good Christian McCaffrey was this past season. All right. I see that I'm getting Scottish food recommendations. Haggis is actually pretty good. All right. Note it. We're here at St. Andrews. I can't wait to show you guys the old course at St. Andrews right outside. It's just dark right now, so it's not something that I'll be doing at this very moment. Are the 49ers looking into Linderbaum for a new center? A lot of the rumors certainly would hope so online. What we will see. I think the 49ers are just now doing their audits. That free agency is not going to be until March. So you still got about a month and a half for that. French dip. That sounds more French than Scottish, but I've noticed there's like a French-Scottish fusion going on in a lot of the restaurants here. So, you know, France is not far away. I don't see any good questions, though. So I think that's probably how we're going to end this show. I mean, we talked everything. Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, the former 49ers director of R&D, fired by the Vikings. It goes back to Sam Darnold. I mean, it's tough. You better not let that happen. If you let that quarterback go, you can't slide while he goes to the Super Bowl with another team. But Mac Jones, Minnesota, they might be an even, and we'll see what they do at GM moving forward past this interim guy. But they might be hungry for Mac Jones, given the roster that they built and the age of that defense. They may want somebody who can deliver right now. All right, everybody hit that subscribe button. How many do we have? Maybe we hit 100,000 here at the old course on St. Andrews. We are 37 subs shy, 99,963. Everybody, thanks for watching. We'll talk to you very soon.